Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you have returned for another quiet evening or are discovering this channel for the first time, this is a gentle place to slow down, learn something new, and let the day gradually fade away. Tonight, we are returning to one of the most familiar birds on Earth, the chicken. A hen may hurry toward a feeder when she hears a lid being lifted. A rooster may stop scratching, raise his head, and study a dark shape moving across the sky. A line of chicks may follow their mother through grass, stopping whenever she stops and gathering when she gives a low food call. As daylight fades, several birds may enter the same coop and choose particular places along a wooden perch. These actions can look automatic. They happen so quickly and so often that people rarely stop to ask what information the chicken is using. But each action may depend on attention, memory, past experience, and the behavior of other birds. In an earlier journey, we followed chickens through their dinosaur ancestry, their descent from red junglefowl, their long domestication, the formation of eggs, the growth of chicks, and the many breeds humans have developed. This time, the journey is narrower. It leads into the small, active brain behind the eyes. The question is not simply whether chickens are intelligent. Intelligence is not one object that an animal either has or does not have. It includes many different abilities. A chicken may remember where food appeared yesterday. It may notice that one hidden group contains more companions than another. It may learn by watching another bird make a mistake. It may recognize members of its flock, remember which birds outrank it, and react differently to calls for food and calls warning of danger. A mother hen may even change her behavior when her chicks seem to be making a poor choice. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find this calm corner of science, one sleepy listener at a time. A hen moving toward a feeder before grain is poured is using a learned prediction. The sound of a bucket, the opening of a door, or familiar footsteps can become connected with food through repetition. A rooster's calls can also change according to his audience. He may react to the same food or possible danger differently when hens are nearby than when he is alone. That does not mean every chicken is solving the same problem in the same way. Memory, attention, social learning, communication, quantity, prediction, emotional state, and maternal care are separate abilities. A bird may perform well in one kind of test and poorly in another. Its result may depend on the reward being offered, the colors or sounds used, the presence of other chickens, its earlier training, and how frightened it is by the testing space. This is why an unfamiliar machine can give a misleading answer. A chicken that refuses to peck a button, enter a narrow chamber, or approach a strange object may not have failed to understand the task. It may simply find the equipment threatening, confusing, or unimportant. Scientists call this problem ecological validity. The term means that a test works best when it resembles a problem the animal is naturally prepared to solve. A chicken does not need to use a tool designed for human fingers. It does need to search through soil, remember safe shelter, distinguish companions from strangers, watch for predators, interpret flock calls, and guide young birds toward food. Chickens are highly visual animals. Their eyes sit on the sides of the head, giving them a broad view of the ground and sky. They are also social animals, usually living among birds whose movements, voices, and rank affect daily choices. And they are prey animals. A delay of only a few seconds can matter when a hawk passes overhead or a fox approaches through grass. The phrase bird brain once treated a small brain as an empty one. Yet brain size alone cannot tell us how well an animal solves the problems of its own life. The ordinary chicken is not becoming more complex as we study it. It was complex before the experiments began. What changes is the way we look at the familiar movements that have been passing unnoticed in farmyards, gardens, forests, and laboratories. Before asking what a chicken remembers, compares, or predicts, we first need to understand how a brain so often dismissed as small can organize such a crowded world. Beneath the feathers of a chicken's head is a brain weighing only a few grams. Its compact size helps support an old belief that birds could manage little beyond instinct and simple habit. For much of the 20th century, scientists also described parts of the avian brain with names that suggested they were ancient, basic structures. Those labels came from comparing birds with mammals. A mammal such as a human, dog, or rat has a neocortex. The folded outer part of the brain involved in vision, memory, planning, and many forms of learning. The neocortex is built from 6 main cellular layers. A chicken's forebrain does not have the same 6-layered arrangement. Its nerve cells are organized in clusters and connected regions, rather than broad sheets stacked in the mammalian pattern. Early anatomists sometimes treated this difference as evidence that birds lacked the brain structures needed for flexible thought. Detailed studies of anatomy, development, and neural connections gradually changed that interpretation. Much of the bird forebrain belongs to a region called the pallium. The pallium is the upper part of the vertebrate forebrain, where complex sensory information is processed and linked with memory, learning, and action. In birds, pallial regions help interpret sights and sounds, recognize patterns, choose responses, and adjust behavior after experience. Some of these regions perform jobs similar to those handled by parts of the mammalian cortex, even though their internal arrangement looks different. Brain organization therefore matters as much as overall brain weight. A small structure can contain closely packed nerve cells and short, efficient connections. Birds also carry less body mass than most mammals of similar behavioral ability, so a direct comparison of total brain size can be misleading. The chicken's eyes provide a clear example of how this compact system works. They sit mainly on the sides of the skull, creating a wide field of view around the body. This helps a ground-feeding bird inspect soil for food while remaining alert to movement near a fence, beneath a shrub, or in the sky. A chicken often turns its head so that one eye faces a seed, an unfamiliar container, or another member of the flock. That movement changes which side of the brain receives the strongest visual input. In birds, much of the information entering one eye travels to the opposite cerebral hemisphere. The right eye therefore sends a large share of its information toward the left hemisphere. The left eye sends much of its information toward the right. Scientists call the division of processing between the two sides lateralization. Lateralization means that the cerebral hemispheres tend to make different contributions to attention and behavior. The left hemisphere of a chicken is often especially useful during focused inspection. It helps with learned categories and small local details, including the careful distinction between a grain of food and a similar-looking piece of grit. The right hemisphere often contributes more strongly, when the bird surveys a broad area, encounters something unfamiliar, watches social activity, or responds to a possible predator. These tendencies allow a chicken to feed and remain watchful within the same period of time. A hen may inspect loose soil closely with one eye, then turn her head toward a sudden movement and bring a wider scene into attention. Both hemispheres continue exchanging information. Each side contributes to the bird's complete response, and neither operates as a separate brain with one fixed purpose. Controlled experiments show that eye use can affect how quickly chickens notice, learn, or remember certain kinds of information. In some observational learning studies, young chicks perform differently depending on which eye had the clearest view of another bird's behavior. Social information has sometimes produced a stronger advantage when it reaches the hemisphere more involved in broad attention and recognition of other animals. The exact result depends on the task, the age of the chick, and what it has experienced before testing. This specialized system begins working remarkably early. A chicken develops for about 21 days inside the egg. By the time it hatches, its eyes are open and its legs can support movement after a short period of drying and rest. Within its first day, a healthy chick may follow a moving companion, peck at small objects, react to warning sounds, and stay close to warmth. The compact brain inside its small skull is already separating food from background, familiar movement from strange movement, and companionship from isolation. A chick enters the open world prepared to sort information almost as soon as light reaches its eyes. The first hours outside the shell reveal how much preparation has already taken place. A chicken develops inside its egg for about 21 days. Near the end of that period, the chick turns so its beak points toward the air cell at the wider end of the shell. It breaks through the inner membrane, begins breathing from that small pocket of air, and later chips through the shell with a temporary hard point on its beak called the egg tooth. After hatching, the chick may rest while its wet down dries. Within a few hours, its legs can support its weight. Its eyes are open, and it can begin walking, pecking, calling, and following movement nearby. Young animals that arrive in this developed condition are called precocial. The word describes species whose young can see and move soon after hatching or birth. Ducks, geese, and many ground-nesting birds also produce precocial young. This early mobility fits the life of an animal whose ancestors nested close to the ground. A chick in forest leaves or tall grass could not remain helpless for weeks. It needed to stay near the mother's warmth, follow the group, respond to warning sounds, and begin searching for small pieces of food. Movement alone would not be enough. The chick also needed a way to decide which sights and sounds deserved attention. Experiments show that this attention is partly organized before the bird has gained much experience. Newly hatched chicks tend to approach certain patterns more readily than others. They often prefer movement that resembles the motion of a living animal. Researchers have tested this using point light displays. A point light display shows only a few bright dots placed where the major joints of an animal would be. When the dots move together, they create the pattern of walking legs and a moving body, even though no feathers, face, or complete outline can be seen. Very young chicks have shown stronger interest in this biological motion than in dots moving without the coordinated pattern of a living creature. The chick does not need to recognize a particular hen for this preference to appear. Its nervous system is already sensitive to the kind of movement likely to belong to a companion. Other experiments have found early interest in shapes that contain features arranged somewhat like a face. These preferences are broad starting points. They help guide the chick toward useful parts of its surroundings, where detailed learning can begin. One of the fastest forms of this learning is called filial imprinting. Filial refers to the relationship between young animals and their parents. During a sensitive period, soon after hatching, a chick can form a strong attachment to a moving object and begin following it. In a natural nest, the object is usually the mother hen. Her shape, warmth, voice, and movement appear together as one source of safety. Laboratory chicks have also imprinted on simple artificial objects, including colored balls, rotating shapes, and small moving boxes. This may seem unusual, but it allows scientists to control exactly what the chick has seen. After only a limited period of exposure, the chick may follow the familiar object and call when separated from it. The attachment is learned, while the urge to seek a moving social target was already present. Experience continues changing these early preferences. A chick can learn that one color predicts food, that a particular sound comes before warmth, or that one moving object belongs to a familiar group. Reward strengthens some choices. Repeated harmless contact can reduce fear. An unpleasant event can create avoidance after a single encounter. The chick therefore begins life with a prepared system rather than a finished map. Its inherited biases direct attention toward movement, companionship, and likely sources of safety. The first day then starts filling that framework with particular sights, sounds, and outcomes. A mother's low call becomes different from an unfamiliar noise. The shape moving ahead becomes a known companion. A patch of ground gains meaning after food is found there. This combination of early preparation and rapid learning is especially useful for a bird that must become active so quickly. Within hours of hatching, the chick is already sorting parts of the world into familiar and strange, useful and risky, close and distant. Recognition works easily while the object remains in view. Its deeper form appears when the familiar shape passes behind a screen and leaves the chick looking at an empty space where something important should still exist. A low screen can turn a simple disappearance into a careful test. A chick watches a familiar object move across the floor. The object passes behind a barrier and vanishes from view. Nothing remains visible except the screen. If the chick searches in the correct place, its behavior suggests that the hidden object still exists within its working memory. Scientists call this ability object permanence. Object permanence means treating something as present even while it cannot be seen. The ability develops in stages. Remembering where an object disappeared is easier than following several unseen movements behind different barriers. Researchers can therefore adjust the difficulty by changing the number of screens, the length of the delay, or the way the object is hidden. Some experiments begin with partial cover rather than complete disappearance. A chick may see a familiar shape passing behind a narrow panel. Only the top and bottom remain visible. The brain joins those separated pieces into one complete object hidden in the middle. This process is called a modal completion. It allows an animal to perceive a whole object even when another surface blocks part of its outline. Without this ability, every tree branch crossing an animal's body could make the body appear divided into separate pieces. In one type of test, chicks are shown two choices. One is a complete object partly hidden behind a screen. The other has a section physically removed, leaving the missing area clearly exposed. Chicks often prefer the partly covered complete shape. Their response suggests that the unseen middle has been filled in through perception. Related experiments have used illusory contours. An illusory contour is an edge that the brain perceives even though no solid line has been drawn. Carefully arranged shapes can suggest the sides of a square floating across an empty background. Chicks around 2 weeks old have responded to these implied forms, showing that their visual system can organize fragments into a larger pattern. Complete disappearance requires memory as well as visual completion. Young chicks can be imprinted on a small object and then watch it move behind one of several screens. After a brief delay, the chick is released. A direct approach to the correct screen shows that the last visible location has been retained. Tests have used delays of about 10 seconds and, in some designs, as long as 180 seconds. Performance generally becomes less reliable as more time passes. The kind of hidden goal also matters. A social object may be a familiar imprinting target or another chick. Food can serve as a separate reward. In some delayed search studies, chicks remembered a hidden social goal more accurately than hidden food. Companionship carries unusually strong value during early life. Separation from the brood can leave a young chick calling loudly and moving through the enclosure in search of contact. That motivation may keep the social object active in memory during the delay. Researchers also distinguish visible displacement from invisible displacement. During visible displacement, the chick watches an object travel directly behind a screen. Its final seen path points toward the hiding place. Invisible displacement adds an extra step. An object may disappear inside a small container. The container then moves behind one screen before emerging empty. Success requires the chick to understand that the object was transferred while hidden. Chicks have remembered visibly displaced objects for periods approaching 3 minutes in some controlled tests. Invisible transfers usually produce weaker or less consistent results. This difference reveals several layers within what appears to be one simple skill. A bird may remember the last location it saw. Greater difficulty appears when the animal must update that location after movement it could not directly observe. Age, training, screen arrangement, and social motivation can all change the result. Fear may also interfere. An unfamiliar testing chamber can cause hesitation even when the chick remembers the correct place. For this reason, researchers compare several trials and control conditions rather than judging the bird from one search. These experiments support a specific conclusion. A hidden object can remain represented for a limited period, and visible fragments can be joined into a complete form. They do not show that a chick imagines every hidden detail or understands disappearance exactly as a human does. The result still changes the meaning of a tiny bird standing before an empty screen. Its search can be guided by something that is no longer reaching its eyes. One concealed companion is only the beginning. Flock life may require several birds, pieces of food, or moving objects to be tracked as they pass behind cover and change places. With several objects moving across the same enclosure, the chick must keep track of more than location. Amount begins to matter. Researchers have studied this ability using chicks only a few days old and small groups of identical objects. The chicks first spend time with 5 matching items, often small red or yellow shapes that move and become familiar through imprinting. Because the chick has followed these objects before, they carry some of the social value of companions. During the test, 2 low screens stand several inches apart. The chick watches as 3 familiar objects move behind one screen. 2 objects disappear behind the other. Once every item is hidden, the chick is released from the center of the enclosure. It cannot see either group. Only the 2 screens remain. Across repeated trials, chicks tend to approach the screen hiding 3 objects more often than the screen hiding 2. The choice shows sensitivity to numerosity. Numerosity simply means the number of items in a group. The chick has no spoken number words and has never seen a written symbol for 3. Its behavior still reflects the difference between the 2 hidden amounts. The task becomes more demanding when the hidden groups change. A chick may first watch 3 objects move behind the left screen and 2 behind the right. Then 1 object comes out from the larger group, crosses the open space, and disappears behind the other screen. The final arrangement is now 2 on one side and 3 on the other. A successful choice requires more than remembering where the larger group began. The chick must update both hidden sets after watching the transfer. Other trials move 2 objects in sequence. Researchers vary the starting amounts and direction, so the bird cannot succeed by following one fixed side. Chicks often approach the screen containing the larger final group. This result is sometimes described as simple addition and subtraction. That phrase offers useful shorthand, although the tested ability is narrower than human arithmetic. The chick is tracking small groups of individual objects as those objects change location. It is not applying symbols, reciting a sequence, or solving a written equation. The totals in these experiments are usually small, often 5 objects or fewer. Small quantities may be handled through what scientists call an object file system. An object file is a temporary record for one particular item. A chick may keep separate short-lasting records for several objects, almost as if each one has its own place in working memory. When an item crosses between screens, one record shifts from one hidden group to the other. This system becomes less reliable as the number of items grows. Larger groups may be judged through an approximate number system. That system represents amount more loosely. The difference between 2 and 8 is easier to notice than the difference between 7 and 8 because the contrast is wider. Researchers must also control for visual clues that can imitate number. 3 objects may cover more total area than 2. They may take longer to move behind a screen or produce more motion across the floor. Experiments therefore change object size, spacing, travel time, and the order of movement. Some trials arrange the objects so that the smaller group covers more visible area. Others prevent the final moving object from always indicating the correct side. No single control removes every possible clue, so conclusions come from patterns across several carefully varied tests. Quantity has practical value in a chick's natural life. A larger cluster of companions may offer greater warmth and safety. More visible food pieces can make one patch worth approaching. A hen leading several chicks may also benefit from noticing when part of her brood has fallen behind. These situations do not require exact counting in the human sense. They reward an animal that can distinguish a larger group from a smaller one and remember how the groups have changed. The hidden objects, therefore, reveal a basic numerical world. A chick can maintain several small items in memory, compare the resulting sets, and revise its choice after visible movement. Amount also forms relationships beyond simple size. A group can come before another in an ordered series. A position can be first, second, or third. Small and large quantities may even pull attention toward different sides of space. Quantity becomes more useful when it can be placed in relation to something else. A chick may notice that one group contains more objects than another. It can also learn that an object occupies a particular place within a sequence. Scientists call this ordinality. Ordinality means understanding position in an ordered series, such as first, second, or third. The ability differs from simply choosing the largest group. A chick may face a row of identical containers and learn that food is hidden in the third position from one end. Every container looks the same. The useful clue is its place within the line. Controlled studies have found that chicks only a few days old can learn simple ordinal positions. Researchers can then reverse the row or ask the bird to approach it from another direction. These changes help reveal whether the chick remembers a fixed spot in the room or a position within the sequence. The distinction matters because natural life contains ordered arrangements. A chick following its mother may move behind one broodmate and ahead of another. Several openings in a fence may differ according to their position. Food items partly hidden along an edge may need to be inspected one after another. Order gives structure to objects that would otherwise appear nearly identical. A striking set of experiments published in 2015 connected quantity with another feature of the chick's world: space. Newly hatched chicks were first familiarized with a certain number of objects. In one version of the experiment, the familiar quantity was 5. The chicks later entered a test area containing 2 identical panels, one positioned on the left and the other on the right. Both panels displayed the same new quantity. When the panels showed 2 objects, a number smaller than the familiar 5, chicks approached the left panel more often. When both panels showed 8 objects, a number larger than 5, they more often approached the right. The side preference changed according to the relationship between the familiar quantity and the new one. Researchers repeated the experiment with different starting values. Chicks familiarized with 20 objects were later shown either 8 or 32. 8 was smaller than the familiar amount and drew more left-side choices. 32 was larger and produced more right-side choices. This pattern is often described as a spatial number association. The term means that numerical size becomes linked with physical direction. Humans in many cultures arrange numbers along a line, commonly running from smaller values on the left to larger values on the right. Reading and schooling strengthen that pattern. But chicks have no written language and receive no mathematics lessons. Their early choices suggest that some connection between magnitude and space may arise before cultural training. Brain lateralization may contribute to the effect. The 2 hemispheres differ somewhat in how they direct attention and process quantities. Those differences could create a natural bias that places smaller and larger amounts toward opposite sides. The exact explanation remains under study. Researchers must also rule out simpler clues. A panel with more objects may contain greater total surface area. the marks may appear more crowded or cover a wider portion of the display. Experiments vary object size, spacing, and total area to reduce the usefulness of these visual features. The strongest results come from patterns that remain after those details have changed. Even then, a chick's response should be described carefully. The bird is not arranging written numerals along an internal ruler. Its behavior shows an early tendency to connect relative quantity with direction under controlled conditions. Most work in this area has also involved very young chicks. Scientists know less about how adult chickens use numerical order during ordinary flock life. Experience may strengthen these biases, weaken them, or redirect them toward different tasks. The early foundation is still clear enough to be useful. Within days of hatching, a chick can compare small groups, remember positions within a row, and respond differently to quantities above or below a familiar value. The floor of a testing chamber has become an ordered space. Outside that chamber, the chicken moves through a much larger arrangement of known doors, feeding places, sheltered corners, and routes used again and again. Those locations gain meaning through memory, turning physical space into a map carried inside the bird. Beyond the testing chamber, space becomes a network of useful places. A chicken may leave the coop through one doorway, cross a strip of grass, pass beneath a shrub, and return later to the same patch of loose soil. The route can look casual. Repeated journeys gradually connect each location with food, shelter, danger, or comfort. One brain region involved in this process is the hippocampus. The hippocampus lies within the forebrain and plays an important role in learning where things are. Birds and mammals both have this structure, although its shape and internal arrangement differ between the two groups. In chickens, damage to the hippocampus can interfere with learning locations and using visual landmarks. A landmark might be a wall, a tree trunk, a feeder, or the edge of a shaded area. The bird combines these features to guide movement through familiar ground. Researchers can study this ability with food hidden in different places. A chick may learn that one type of food appears in one corner, while a different food appears somewhere else. Before testing, the chick can be allowed to eat enough of one food to reduce its value for a short time. This process is called selective satiation. Satiation means that eating has temporarily lowered the animal's desire for that particular item. When released again, the chick may search the location linked with the food it has not recently eaten. The choice shows what-where memory. What-where memory connects the identity of an outcome with the place where it was found. The chick remembers more than a rewarding corner. It retains which reward belonged there. This kind of memory becomes useful across a farmyard or free-range area. A hen may learn where water is available during the morning. She can remember which patch of dry soil is suitable for dust bathing and which doorway leads back inside. Repeated use may create a familiar route between the coop, cover, and feeding ground. Modern researchers can follow these journeys with small electronic leg bands. Radio frequency identification systems record when an individual bird passes through a doorway or approaches a sensor. Some studies also use cameras, GPS units, or automated tracking software to measure distance and time outdoors. The results show wide differences between hens living in the same flock. One bird may leave the house frequently and travel far across the range. Another may remain close to the entrance or spend most of the day indoors. These patterns can remain fairly consistent over weeks. Memory provides only part of the explanation. A hen may know where a distant feeding area is and still avoid using it. Open ground can feel dangerous to a prey animal. Cloud cover, strong wind, rain, and temperature may alter outdoor movement. Trees, artificial shelters, and low structures can make distant areas easier to reach by breaking up exposed space. Other chickens also influence the decision. A cautious bird may follow familiar companions outside. A lower-ranking hen may avoid a narrow doorway when dominant birds gather there. Hunger can make a longer route worthwhile, while a recent disturbance may keep the flock near cover. Personality adds further variation. Some chickens approach unfamiliar spaces quickly. Others spend longer watching before moving. A bird that rarely explores may still remember the available route with great accuracy. Its behavior reflects the balance between stored knowledge and present risk. This helps explain why researchers separate learning from willingness to act. A chicken that remains near the starting point has not necessarily forgotten the destination. Fear, social pressure, or low motivation may keep the memory from appearing as movement. Spatial decisions are therefore assembled from several streams of information. The hippocampus helps preserve landmarks and locations. Past rewards give those places value. Current conditions determine whether the bird uses what it remembers. The yard becomes a changing map rather than a collection of disconnected patches. A shaded corner may carry the memory of safety. One feeder may be associated with competition, while another offers quieter access. The coop entrance can signal shelter as daylight fades. Location also becomes tied to routine. A hen may arrive at a known place before anything has appeared there, guided by sounds and repeated timing. Remembering where an event occurred gradually supports an expectation of when it is likely to happen again. A familiar place can gain meaning from what usually happens there. When a hen hears a feed container open, the sound may draw her toward a spot where grain has appeared many times before. The food is still absent, yet the routine has already begun guiding her behavior. Scientists study this kind of prediction by pairing a clear signal with an event that follows after a short delay. In one set of experiments, hens learned that different sounds announced different outcomes. One sound predicted something positive, such as access to food. Another led to a neutral event. A third warned of a mildly unpleasant experience. The outcome arrived about 15 seconds after the sound. That waiting period gave researchers time to observe how the hens prepared. Their attention changed soon after the predictive cue began. Before an unpleasant event, hens often increased their movement and made more rapid head motions as they inspected the surroundings. A signal connected with reward produced a different pattern. Some hens showed comfort behaviors, including preening or a brief stretch of the wings, while waiting for the expected food. The sound had gained meaning through repeated experience. It allowed the bird to prepare for an event before the event itself became visible. Prediction can influence movement across an entire day. Footsteps outside a poultry house may announce feeding. A door opening at sunset can signal access to an indoor perch. The noise of a particular vehicle may become linked with a familiar caretaker. These associations do not require the hen to understand a clock. They require a stable connection between a cue and an outcome that tends to follow. Time becomes especially important when a chicken must choose between a small reward available soon and a larger reward available later. Researchers have tested this choice using response keys and timed access to food. One option produced food after a wait of about 2 seconds. The hen could eat for only about 3 seconds before the feeder closed. A second option offered much longer access, lasting about 22 seconds. When the larger reward required a wait of roughly 22 seconds, hens often selected the smaller and faster option. The long delay reduced the value of the extra feeding time. Researchers then shortened the wait for the larger reward to about 6 seconds. The hens became far more likely to choose the option providing 22 seconds of food. The reward itself had remained the same. The shorter delay changed whether waiting was worthwhile. This pattern is described as temporal discounting. Temporal means related to time. Discounting means that a future reward loses some of its present value as the delay grows. A large benefit arriving very soon may be worth waiting for. The same benefit can become less attractive when it lies farther away, or when its arrival feels uncertain. Temporal discounting appears in many animals, including humans. Its strength depends on hunger, previous experience, reward size, and the reliability of the signal. A hungry hen may value immediate food more strongly. A bird trained with dependable cues may tolerate waiting more easily than one exposed to unpredictable outcomes. Individual chickens can also differ in patience and willingness to remain near the apparatus. The experiment therefore reveals a flexible choice, rather than a permanent label of patient or impulsive. The same bird may choose differently when the delay, food amount, or testing conditions change. Anticipation also affects emotional state. A cue connected with an unpleasant event can increase watchfulness before anything harmful occurs. A reward signal can produce food-directed activity, while the feeder remains closed. Past events are being used to organize behavior across the seconds ahead. This ability connects memory with preparation. A remembered location tells the chicken where food appeared. A predictive sound helps estimate when access may begin. Delay then influences whether the expected reward remains worth pursuing. Social life adds less predictable signals. Another chicken can move, call, compete, or suddenly withdraw. The value of a feeder may change according to which flock members are standing beside it. A familiar bird can therefore become a cue, carrying its own history of safety, tolerance, or conflict. A flock member can become a living signal shaped by many previous encounters. One hen may usually allow quiet feeding beside her. A second may defend the same space with a quick peck or forward step. Another bird may be familiar enough to reduce fear simply by remaining nearby. To use those differences, chickens need some way to distinguish the animals around them. Scientists separate several levels of social recognition. Familiarity discrimination means telling a known flock member from an unfamiliar chicken. Individual discrimination goes further by responding differently to particular birds that are already familiar. A hen could recognize that two birds both belong to her group, while still treating each one according to its own history. Researchers explored this ability in a study published in 2009. 8 hens were trained inside a Y-shaped maze. The starting passage divided into 2 arms, with a familiar flock member visible at the end of each route. Each test hen learned that approaching one particular bird produced a reward. Choosing the other familiar bird did not. The pairs changed across the experiment, so the hen could not succeed by learning that one general side was always correct. 7 of the 8 hens eventually learned the individual pairings. Their choices showed that familiar flockmates were not being treated as one interchangeable category. The birds could use differences between known individuals to guide a learned decision. The same researchers also tried to study recognition with a different kind of equipment. Hens were trained to peck keys in response to visual displays. Performance was much weaker. The difference between the two tasks offered an important lesson. The Y maze allowed the hen to walk toward a living chicken using familiar social behavior. A key pecking apparatus required attention to a flat image and an action that carried little natural social meaning. Fear, low interest, or confusion about the response could hide an ability that appeared more clearly in a realistic setting. Visual appearance supplies several possible recognition cues. A chicken's comb has a particular size, outline, and color. Feather patterns differ across the head, neck, wings, and back. Body size, posture, walking style, and repeated movements add further information. Chickens can also hear differences among individual voices. A complete social identity may therefore be built from sight, sound, movement, and remembered interaction. Lighting can change how useful some of those cues become. Chicken vision extends into ultraviolet wavelengths beyond the violet edge visible to humans. Feathers and skin may reflect ultraviolet light in patterns that people cannot see without special equipment. Artificial lighting that changes color or removes parts of the normal spectrum can distort the appearance of a familiar bird. Experiments have found weaker social discrimination under some colored lighting conditions. The hen may still hear the companion and see its general shape, while important details of plumage or comb appearance become harder to use. This helps explain why claims about chicken facial recognition require care. The head and face probably carry useful information. Recognition can also draw from the body, voice, motion, and context surrounding an encounter. Popular statements sometimes claim that chickens recognize exactly 100 faces. No single decisive experiment has established that precise limit. The stronger conclusion is more grounded. Chickens can distinguish familiar individuals under suitable conditions, and their success depends on the cues available during the test. Repeated encounters give those cues meaning. A particular outline becomes connected with being displaced from food. A familiar call may predict calm contact. The approach of one bird can cause a hen to remain, while the approach of another causes her to step away. Recognition turns the flock into a collection of remembered social histories. Those histories save time and reduce uncertainty. A chicken does not need to discover the same relationship from the beginning during every meeting. Past outcomes can guide present distance, access, and caution. As those individual memories accumulate, they form an ordered social system in which some birds regularly advance and others yield before contact occurs. A remembered encounter can shape behavior long after the original peck has ended. When two hens meet beside a feeder, they may already carry a history of earlier contests. One bird steps forward. The other turns aside before physical contact occurs. This pattern saves both animals from repeating the same costly struggle every time they meet. Scientists describe the resulting structure as a dominance hierarchy. A dominance hierarchy is an ordered pattern of approach, retreat, winning, and losing, among members of a social group. In chickens, it became widely known as the pecking order. The phrase grew from the work of Norwegian zoologist Thorleif Skjelderup Ebbe. As a child during the late 1800s, he spent long periods watching chickens at his family's home near Oslo. He noticed that pecks did not pass randomly through the flock. Certain birds regularly displaced particular companions, while yielding to others. Skjelderup Ebbe later described these relationships in scientific work during the early 20th century. In a small, stable flock, the pattern can become nearly linear. One hen may dominate a second. That second bird may dominate a third. Several connected relationships create an order running through much of the group. Perfect straight lines are uncommon. Pairs can reverse positions, and some relationships remain uncertain. Even so, stored social knowledge allows each chicken to estimate the likely result of an encounter. Rank can affect access to grain, water, nest boxes, sheltered dust-bathing places, and preferred positions on a perch. A lower-ranking hen may wait until a dominant bird leaves the feeder. At dusk, competition can increase around high resting places because elevated perches offer distance from the floor and may feel safer. Hierarchy also reduces the need for constant fighting. A full contest takes energy and carries a risk of injury. A brief posture, forward movement, or threatening peck can settle the interaction when both birds remember what happened before. The order remains flexible over time. Age, illness, injury, sexual maturity, and changes in body condition can alter a bird's position. Removing one flock member may disturb several relationships. Introducing an unfamiliar hen creates fresh uncertainty because the established birds have no stored history with her. Group size changes the system even further. In experiments comparing flocks of about 10 hens with groups of roughly 120, birds in the smaller groups reacted differently to familiar and unfamiliar individuals. Their behavior fit a system based heavily on individual recognition. Hens living among approximately 120 companions showed less difference between known birds and strangers. They also displayed lower levels of some aggressive behavior than researchers expected. Remembering a separate dominance relationship with more than 100 flockmates may be inefficient. Large groups can rely more heavily on immediate information. Body size, comb development, posture, movement, and confidence may signal probable status without requiring a detailed personal history. Greater social tolerance may also become useful when recognizing every individual is difficult. A study published in 2023 followed 418 laying hens. The birds lived in groups of 20 or in groups containing around 120. Researchers recorded aggressive interactions and changes in rank over time. The smaller flocks produce clearer individual dominance patterns. Larger flocks showed a more complicated and less strictly ordered social structure. Rank still existed, but it did not operate as one perfectly remembered list running from the highest bird to the lowest. This difference reveals how chickens' social behavior adjusts to scale. A flock of 8 presents a manageable set of recurring individuals. A flock larger than 100 creates a moving crowd in which immediate signals may carry more value. Both settings require decisions about access and risk. The information used to make those decisions changes with the number of companions involved. Social order therefore grows from memory, recognition, and present observation. A hen remembers previous outcomes while also reading the posture and movement in front of her. This allows many disagreements to end through a step backward rather than a fight. Rank also helps determine which birds receive attention. A companion that repeatedly reaches food first may become worth watching. Observing her choices can provide useful information without forcing every member of the flock to discover the same danger or reward alone. A bird that regularly reaches food first can also reveal which objects are worth avoiding. For a young chick, personal trial and error carries a cost. An unfamiliar berry may taste bitter. A bright insect may contain defensive chemicals. A new object on the ground may be harmless, though approaching it still takes time and exposes the chick to risk. Watching another bird can provide useful information before direct contact occurs. This process is called social learning. Social learning happens when one animal's behavior or experience changes what another animal later does. A controlled experiment published in 1998 examined this ability using young chickens and a conspicuous bead. The bead was coated with methyl anthranilate. Methyl anthranilate is a strong-tasting chemical found naturally in some fruits and used in bird repellent products. Humans often describe its smell as similar to artificial grape flavoring. Many birds find the concentrated taste unpleasant. During the demonstration, an actor chick stood on one side of a wire mesh divider. An observer chick watched from the other side. The mesh allowed the two birds to see and hear each other, while preventing the observer from reaching the bead. When the actor pecked the treated object, the bitter coating produced an immediate reaction. The chick might pull its head back, wipe its beak against the floor, or shake its head. Its body movements made the unpleasant outcome visible. Control chicks watched a different demonstration. Their actor pecked a bead coated with water. That bird could investigate normally without showing the same rejection response. Later, each observer was presented with a similar bead. The test object was dry, so the observer would not receive the bitter taste during its first decision. Chicks that had watched the aversive reaction were less likely to peck. Observers that had seen the water-coated control bead approached more readily. The difference showed that information had crossed the mesh. The observing chick never tasted the chemical during the demonstration. Its later avoidance came from connecting the bead's appearance with the other bird's visible response. Researchers also tested how long that socially acquired information remained useful. Some observers encountered the test bead after about 30 minutes. Others waited roughly 3 hours. A final group was tested after approximately 24 hours. Avoidance remained detectable even after the longest delay. For a chick only days old, one brief observation could influence behavior the following day. Several details may carry the lesson. The observer can see the actor's sudden withdrawal and beak wiping. Head movements may signal that contact produced an unpleasant result. The actor may also make sounds or change its posture. Researchers cannot easily separate every cue within the complete reaction, though the whole sequence provides a clear warning. Eye use can influence this kind of learning. Because much of the information from one eye travels to the opposite cerebral hemisphere, a chick's head position changes which side receives the strongest view. Some studies of observational learning have found different performance depending on the eye used during the demonstration. The effect varies with the task and the chick's earlier experience. both hemispheres still contribute to the completed response. The result supports a precise form of social learning. The observer links a visible object with another bird's unpleasant reaction and stores that association for later use. It does not establish that the chick imagines the actor's private feelings or understands the chemical reason for the rejection. The practical outcome remains valuable. One bird contacts something unpleasant. A nearby observer changes its own behavior and may avoid receiving the same result. This ability can spread information through a brood. A chick watching its mother, or a more experienced companion, may learn where to peck, which item to leave alone, or when sudden withdrawal signals danger. Rank and familiarity can affect how much attention a demonstrator receives. A bird that repeatedly finds food may seem more useful to watch than one whose choices rarely succeed. Conflicting demonstrations create a more difficult problem, because the observer must weigh the identity of the bird, the strength of its reaction, and the apparent result before deciding what to copy. When several birds behave differently, the observer must sort useful information from background activity. A flock may contain one hen that reaches a feeder quickly, another that hesitates, and a third that leaves after tasting something unfamiliar. Copying every movement would produce confusion. Chicken social learning, therefore, depends partly on who is being watched and what result follows. Researchers call the watched animal a demonstrator. The bird gathering information is the observer. In controlled studies, demonstrators can be trained to peck a colored key, choose one container, or feed from a particular location. Observers watch through wire or clear panels before receiving a chance to act. Some experiments have found that dominant birds influence flockmates more strongly than lower-ranking demonstrators. A high-ranking hen may attract attention because her movements already affect access to food and space. She often approaches resources with less hesitation and remains visible near valuable places. Status alone does not explain every result. Success also matters. A lower-ranking bird that repeatedly obtains food can become a useful source of information. The observer may learn from the outcome attached to the behavior, rather than simply copying the most powerful individual. Experiments with unfamiliar foods make this filtering easier to measure. Hens can watch companions eat food dyed with different colors. Later, the observers receive a choice between those colors. Under some conditions, they become more willing to eat the color consumed actively by the demonstrator. The amount of visible feeding can affect the result. A bird that pecks repeatedly and continues swallowing provides a stronger sign of safety than one that investigates briefly and walks away. Color preferences can complicate these tests. Chickens do not always begin with equal interest in red, blue, green, or yellow objects. A color may resemble familiar food, while another may trigger caution. Researchers therefore switch the colors assigned to each outcome and compare several groups. This helps separate learning from an existing visual preference. Social influence can also occur through several different processes. Local enhancement happens when another bird draws attention to a place. A hen may approach one corner because flockmates have gathered there, even without copying their exact movements. Stimulus enhancement occurs when attention is drawn toward a particular object. Seeing a companion peck a blue lid may make the lid more noticeable later. Response facilitation means that watching an action increases the chance of performing the same general action. One chicken beginning to drink can make nearby birds more likely to lower their heads toward the water. These effects differ from strict imitation. Imitation requires copying a particular action pattern, including details of how the action is performed. That standard is difficult to prove because two birds may reach the same result through simpler social cues. A chicken following others to a feeder may have learned where the food is, while its pecking movements come from ordinary feeding behavior already present before the demonstration. Group activity often becomes synchronized in this way. Several hens may begin preening within the same period. Feeding can spread across a flock as birds notice movement around a trough. Dust bathing may become clustered when loose soil is available and one bird begins using it. In a study using 3 drinking bowls, the behavior of companions influenced which bowl an observer approached and when it began drinking. The nearby activity supplied information about location and safety, even when the observer did not reproduce every movement exactly. Rank, familiarity, and recent success can all change the weight given to a demonstrator. A frightened observer may prefer to follow a known companion. A hungry bird may pay greatest attention to whichever hen is feeding efficiently. Previous failure can reduce the value of a once reliable model. The information gathered from others is therefore selective and flexible. The flock acts as a moving source of clues, with each bird offering evidence through location, persistence, and outcome. Visual information remains useful only while the observer can see the action. A soft call can travel through grass, around a feeder, or across the coop when the bird producing it is hidden from view. Once flock members spread through tall grass or move behind a feeder, watching alone becomes unreliable. Sound continues traveling when bodies and food are hidden from view. A chicken produces those sounds with an organ called the syrinx. The syrinx sits low in the chest, near the point where the trachea divides into the 2 bronchi leading toward the lungs. Air passing through vibrating membranes there creates the calls heard across a coop, yard, or patch of woodland. Different situations produce calls with different patterns. A rooster may give food-associated sounds while standing over something edible. Overhead movement can bring an aerial alarm linked with hawks and other threats from the sky. Danger approaching along the ground may produce a separate alarm pattern. Chickens also use contact calls while separated, distress sounds during discomfort, and maternal calls between hens and chicks. Courtship adds its own vocal behavior, often combined with posture and movement. These categories should not be treated as a fixed dictionary containing a precise number of chicken words. The boundaries can shift with urgency, age, sex, and social setting. One of the clearest examples comes from food calling. A rooster that discovers grain, an insect, or another valued item may begin tidbitting. Tidbitting combines repeated calls with visible movements around the food. The rooster may pick up an item, drop it, peck beside it, or point his beak toward the ground. Hens nearby can use both the sound and the movement to locate the discovery. Researchers have separated those parts through playback experiments. In work published during the late 1990s, hens heard recordings of rooster food calls while no food and no live caller were visible. The listeners began directing more attention toward the floor. They lowered their gaze, inspected the ground, and increased searching behavior in the area around them. A recorded sound had changed where the hens looked before they found any physical evidence of food. Control sounds produced different responses. Contact calls could attract general attention without creating the same focused search near the ground. Ground alarm calls prepared hens for possible danger and did not guide them toward an imaginary feeding spot. The contrast showed that listeners were responding to more than the presence of another chicken's voice. The acoustic pattern carried information associated with a particular kind of event. Scientists describe this as functional reference. A functionally referential signal is linked with something outside the caller and produces an appropriate response in the listener. Human words can name absent objects through shared language and grammar. Chicken calls operate through a narrower system shaped by repeated situations. A food call reliably occurs around edible discoveries and causes listeners to search for food. An aerial alarm directs attention upward and can send birds toward cover. A ground alarm prepares the flock for danger moving through nearby vegetation or across the floor. The call does not need to describe the predator's color, distance, or exact location to be useful. It needs to guide attention and action in a way suited to the event. Urgency can alter the signal. A rapidly approaching threat may change call rate or duration. The acoustic structure can also vary with the caller's level of arousal and the type of danger present. Listeners combine this sound with the wider scene. A hen may look toward the caller's gaze, follow the direction of his head, or notice companions suddenly freezing nearby. Communication, therefore, depends on the complete situation surrounding the vocalization. Sound supplies information, while posture and movement help narrow its meaning. Experience also matters. A young bird gradually learns which calls predict food, separation, or danger. Repeated false alarms may weaken a response, while a reliable caller can become especially valuable to the flock. The ordinary noise of chickens now carries a more organized pattern. A brief call can move attention toward the ground, redirect several birds toward shelter, or help scattered companions remain connected when vegetation blocks their view. Calling still carries a cost. It can reveal the caller's position, attract competitors, or give valuable food to nearby birds. The presence and identity of the audience can therefore influence whether the signal is produced at all. The value of calling changes with the birds close enough to hear. A rooster facing the same food or the same moving shadow may behave differently when he is alone, beside a hen, or near another male. Scientists call this an audience effect. An audience effect occurs when a signal changes according to the presence, identity, or behavior of possible listeners. Researchers have tested this by showing young roosters, called cockerels, models of predators passing overhead. The model might resemble the dark outline of a hawk moving above the enclosure. The cockerel can see the same shape during every trial. Only the social setting changes. When another chicken is nearby, cockerels usually produce more aerial alarm calls than they do while facing the model alone. The companion also matters. A familiar hen may create a stronger response than another male. A mate can affect calling differently from an unfamiliar female. Chicks may also increase the value of warning because their small size makes them especially vulnerable. The presence of a bird from another species does not always produce the same result. A nearby quail or another non-chicken companion may be visible, yet the rooster's calling can remain lower than it would beside a member of his own species. This suggests that the caller responds to more than the sight of any living animal. The likely receiver has social values shaped by species, familiarity, and previous contact. Experiments have also separated what the caller sees from what the audience can see. A cockerel may have a clear view of the overhead model, while a nearby hen is positioned behind a barrier. The hen cannot simply copy his first startled movement, because the threat remains outside her view. Calling still increases when the rooster knows another chicken is present. Researchers have used recorded hen sounds and moving video images to divide the audience into separate cues. A hen's image can provide visual company. Her recorded calls provide an auditory presence without a living bird in the enclosure. These tests show that roosters can respond to both kinds of social information, although a complete live audience usually provides the richest signal. Food calling follows a similar pattern. A rooster that discovers grain often produces tidbitting calls more frequently when hens are nearby. The food itself has the same nutritional value. Its social value rises when calling may attract a female. Tidbitting can become part of courtship because a hen approaching the food also approaches the rooster who discovered it. Some males occasionally give food-associated calls when the item is poor, hidden, or already gone. A rooster may peck at the ground and perform familiar tidbitting movements around a place containing little of value. A hen hearing the signal may still come closer. Researchers sometimes describe this behavior as tactical deception. The phrase refers to a signal that benefits the caller by causing another animal to respond to an event that is absent or less valuable than expected. Care is needed with that label. The behavior shows flexible signaling and a possible short-term advantage. Current evidence does not establish that the rooster deliberately creates a false belief in the fully human sense. Simple learning can also shape the behavior. A male may discover that food-like calls attract hens, then repeat the signal in situations where approaching females are rewarding. Reliability places limits on this strategy. A hen that repeatedly approaches one rooster and finds no useful food can begin responding less strongly. The caller may gain attention during an occasional misleading display, while frequent poor signals reduce future trust. Honest calling remains valuable because real food discoveries help maintain the connection between the sound and the expected reward. The rooster's voice therefore changes according to opportunity. An aerial alarm becomes more useful when vulnerable companions are present. A food call gains social value when hens can approach. The likely response of the listener becomes part of the situation producing the call. This flexibility requires several relationships to be held together at once. The bird responds to the event in front of him, the identity of the nearby audience, and the outcome that calling has produced during earlier encounters. Social information can also be joined across events that were never directly experienced together, allowing a chicken to act on a relationship hidden between two known ones. A flock contains relationships that no single bird can watch from beginning to end. One hen may see bird A displace bird B from a feeder. Later, she may watch bird B force bird C away from a dust-bathing patch. Bird A and bird C may never confront each other while she is present. The two observed encounters still contain enough information to suggest how a future meeting might unfold. Scientists call this kind of reasoning transitive inference. Transitive inference means deriving an unobserved relationship from relationships that are already known. The simplest form can be written as a short order. A ranks above B and B ranks above C. That arrangement suggests that A probably ranks above C. Humans use similar reasoning when organizing height, age, price, or position. A person can learn that one road is longer than a second road, then learn that the second is longer than a third. The first road can be placed above the third without measuring those two directly against each other. For a social chicken, relational ordering could reduce risk. Watching several contests may help a hen estimate the status of a bird she has never challenged herself. Researchers can also test the same ability without using real flock members. A study published in 2024 worked with 6 adult hens and a set of 6 visual items. The items were labeled A through F for the researchers, although the hens saw only distinct symbols or shapes. Training began with overlapping pairs. When A appeared beside B, choosing A brought a reward. When B appeared beside C, B was rewarded. The same pattern continued through the series, with C preferred over D, D over E, and E over F. Each pair taught one small piece of the larger order. The hens received extensive training because every relationship had to become reliable before unfamiliar combinations could be tested. Food rewards strengthened the correct selections. Repeated errors were followed by more opportunities to learn the pair. Eventually, the birds had experience with the neighboring relationships, while never seeing some distant items together. The crucial trials introduced new pairs. A hen might encounter B beside D, even though those two symbols had never appeared together during training. She might also see B beside E or C beside E. Choosing correctly required information from more than one learned pair. B had been rewarded over C, and C had been rewarded over D. That wider order supported a preference for B over D. The tested hens showed choices consistent with transitive inference during these unrewarded trials. Unrewarded testing mattered because immediate food could not teach the new relationship while the trial was happening. The first response had to come from information learned earlier. Researchers also examined a simpler explanation based on reinforcement history. An item near the top of the series had often been rewarded. An item near the bottom had often gone unrewarded. This history can sometimes create preferences without a complete ordered representation. The pattern of rewards did not provide a clean explanation for most of the individual hens. Their choices more closely matched the relationships, linking the symbols across the full series. The evidence remains careful and limited. Only 6 adult hens took part. The training lasted far longer than an ordinary flock encounter. Abstract shapes on cards also differ greatly from living chickens that move, call, threaten, and retreat. The study supports an ability to organize learned relationships and apply that order to an unfamiliar pairing. It does not show that hens perform formal logic in the human mathematical sense. The result still reaches beyond the collection of isolated memories. Separate experiences can be connected into a wider structure. That structure allows behavior to be guided by a relationship the bird has never directly seen. Chicken social life offers a practical setting where such an ability may be useful. A hen can watch which birds yield, which ones advance, and how several flock members relate across repeated meetings. The resulting order may help her avoid a dangerous contest or approach a resource at a safer moment. Performance will never look identical across every bird. Some hens approach unfamiliar symbols quickly while others spend longer watching the apparatus. Learning speed, caution, motivation, and previous experience all influence how clearly an ability appears during a controlled test. The variation between individuals becomes part of the intelligence being measured, rather than meaningless noise around an imaginary average chicken. The differences between hens often become visible before a test has properly begun. One bird may walk toward a new object within seconds. Another may remain several feet away, turning her head as she watches from first one eye and then the other. A third may refuse to approach during the entire session. When researchers combine all of those results, the study may report an average score. That average can hide several distinct ways of responding to the same problem. Scientists use the term animal personality for behavioral differences that remain fairly consistent across time or across related situations. A hen that approaches an unfamiliar feeder quickly on one day may also explore a new enclosure sooner during a later test. A cautious bird may repeatedly remain near familiar cover. Researchers commonly measure traits such as boldness, fearfulness, exploration, activity, aggression, vigilance, sociability, and persistence. These traits can affect how much information an animal gathers. A bold chicken may reach a new food source first and learn from direct contact. The same willingness to approach can expose her to greater danger. A cautious hen may take longer to participate, while gaining information by watching companions from a safer distance. Fast and slow explorers can therefore use different routes toward the same useful knowledge. This matters during intelligence testing. A bird that remembers the correct container may still avoid it because the container has changed color or moved beside an unfamiliar wall. Low motivation can also reduce participation. Food loses value after a recent meal. Social contact may matter more to a separated chick than the reward offered by the apparatus. A slow approach provides information about caution and motivation alongside memory. Chickens also differ because domestic populations have been shaped for different purposes. A large study involving nearly 2,000 birds compared the behavioral development of Lohmann brown layers, Lohmann jewel chickens, and Rhinelanders. Lohmann browns have been selected mainly for egg production. Lohmann dual birds belong to a dual-purpose line developed to provide both eggs and meat. Rhinelanders are an older regional breed with a different selection history. The groups did not react identically to unfamiliar objects or unfamiliar humans. Some showed stronger avoidance, while others approached more readily or remained more active during testing. These differences appeared as the birds developed, showing how inherited tendencies and experience can interact across the first weeks of life. Comparisons between white leghorn and brown-necked chicks have also found differences in movement, exploration, and the effort used to regain social contact. White leghorns come from a light-bodied egg-laying line. Brown-necked chickens are another commercial layer type with a separate breeding history. A chick from one line may move through a new space more quickly, while another spends more time calling or trying to return to companions. Neither response gives a complete measure of general intelligence. Each reveals which needs and risks carry the greatest weight for that bird. Red junglefowl provide another useful comparison. These wild ancestors of domestic chickens live in habitats containing dense vegetation, uneven ground, predators, and scattered food. They often show stronger vigilance or exploration than some highly domesticated lines. human breeding has altered body size, egg production, growth rate, tameness, and social behavior over many generations. Selection for one feature can influence other traits indirectly. A heavier body may change movement. Reduced fear of humans can increase approach during a laboratory task. Intense selection for production can alter activity, feeding motivation or sensitivity to stress. Sex and age add further variation. Young chicks may respond strongly to isolation because contact with companions is essential for warmth and safety. Adult roosters face different social pressures involving territory, rivals, and courtship. A laying hen may alter her movement while seeking a nest site. Health and recent experience can shift these responses again. The chicken tested on one quiet morning may behave differently after a frightening disturbance or a difficult social encounter. Cognitive performance therefore grows from several interacting parts. Memory and perception provide the ability. Personality influences how information is approached. Motivation helps determine whether the bird chooses to act. Breed, age, sex, and earlier experience shape the conditions surrounding that choice. Two hens living in the same flock may share the same feeder and shelter, while gathering information in very different ways. One explores through direct contact. The other builds knowledge through distance and observation. Recent experience can change those strategies even further, causing an uncertain cue to feel safe enough to approach or threatening enough to avoid. A cautious chicken may approach the same object differently after a calm morning than after a stressful one. The object has not changed. Its meaning has. Researchers study this shift using tasks built around uncertainty. A chicken first learns that one clear cue leads to something desirable, usually food. A second cue predicts no reward or a mildly unpleasant outcome. The cues may be placed at opposite ends of a row shown in different colors or presented in separate locations. After enough training, the bird approaches the rewarded cue quickly and hesitates near the other. The revealing trials use a cue placed somewhere between those two familiar signals. Its outcome has never been learned. The chicken must respond without knowing whether food will appear. Scientists call this a cognitive judgment bias test. A judgment bias is a consistent tendency to interpret uncertain information according to the animal's emotional state. Researchers often use the word affective to describe states connected with comfort, stress, excitement, or fear. A bird in a more positive condition may approach an ambiguous cue, as though a good outcome is reasonably likely. A bird affected by stress may wait longer, keep more distance, or behave as though the uncertain cue predicts trouble. Approach time provides one measurable result. The test does not require the chicken to describe how it feels. Its expectation appears through movement. A study published in 2021 used this method to examine the effects of commercial hatchery processing. Commercial chicks may hatch inside large machines rather than beneath a mother hen. After hatching, they can pass through several procedures before reaching the farm. These may include movement along conveyor systems, separation from eggshell material, vaccination, counting, and transport. Bright light, mechanical noise, handling, and unstable surfaces can occur during a sensitive early period. Researchers compared commercially processed chicks with control chicks exposed to a gentler procedure. The control birds remained in more stable surroundings and experienced less handling. both groups later learned that one location predicted reward while another did not. Intermediate positions were then tested. At approximately 1 week old, chicks from the commercial hatchery condition took longer to approach the ambiguous cues. The same general difference remained measurable when the birds were tested again at around 10 weeks of age. Researchers described this pattern as a pessimistic-like judgment bias. The phrase has a narrow scientific meaning. It describes slower or more cautious responses to uncertain cues after a stressful experience. The birds were not expressing spoken beliefs about the future. Their movement showed that uncertainty had been given a less favorable value. This kind of result connects emotion with the abilities already seen. A chicken can remember where food appeared and still avoid that location after a frightening event nearby. It can recognize a predictive sound while responding more strongly to the possibility of a poor outcome. Waiting for a larger reward may become harder when the surroundings feel unsafe. Exploration also changes when unfamiliar objects are interpreted through recent stress. Stored knowledge remains available, though emotional state can alter how confidently it is used. The effect may last for minutes after a disturbance or continue across development when the experience occurs very early. The strength of the change depends on the individual bird, the type of stress, and what happens afterward. Supportive surroundings can provide opportunities for recovery. Stable companions may reduce fear during exploration. Cover and predictable routines can make uncertain places easier to approach. Judgment bias therefore offers a window into how past experience colors present decisions. Two chickens can stand before the same unfamiliar feeder and receive the same sensory information. One may approach because earlier events have made exploration feel worthwhile. The other may remain several steps away because uncertainty has become connected with risk. Their different choices carry traces of what happened before the feeder appeared. This interaction becomes especially important in the relationship between a hen and her chicks. Her decisions influence where they travel, which foods they investigate, and how quickly they respond when the surroundings become dangerous. A mother hen carries her own history of safe food, unpleasant tastes, and familiar feeding places. Her chicks begin walking and pecking within hours of hatching, yet their early movements are guided by curiosity more than experience. A chick may strike at a seed, a small stone, a dark mark in the soil, or a piece of eggshell. Its beak gathers information through contact. Useful choices gradually become more common as food is swallowed and poor choices are rejected. The mother can speed up that learning. Domestic chicks are precocial, meaning they hatch in a mobile and fairly developed condition. They feed for themselves rather than receiving chewed food directly from the hen's mouth. The hen guides them by directing attention toward particular places and objects. When she finds something edible, she may produce a repeated food call while lowering her head toward the ground. She scratches backward with her feet, exposing seeds, insects, and loose plant material beneath the surface. A small item may be lifted in her beak and dropped again, where the chicks can see it. The young birds gather close and begin pecking near her feet. Experiments have found that maternal food calls draw chicks toward the hen and increase feeding activity nearby. Her signaling also changes according to the brood's behavior. A hen may call more when chicks remain far away, stand inactive, or fail to begin feeding. Their response becomes part of the information guiding her next action. A carefully controlled experiment tested how flexible this guidance could be. The study involved 12 mother hens. Each hen first learned that food of one color was pleasant to eat, while food of another color carried an unpleasant taste. The colors acted as clear visual labels. One predicted a suitable feeding choice. The other had become connected with rejection. Researchers later tested each hen with her chicks. A barrier allowed the mother to watch the young birds while preventing her from inspecting or tasting their food directly. The chicks were secretly given palatable food in both colors. Every piece was safe for them to eat. The hen had no way to know that the supposedly poor color had been changed. She could only rely on the association she had learned earlier. When the chicks ate the color their mother believed was good, her feeding displays remained relatively steady. Her behavior changed when they began eating the color she had learned to avoid. She increased ground pecking and scratching. Food calls and other attention-directing movements also became more active. From the hen's point of view, the chicks appeared to be choosing an unsuitable food. Her response supplied stronger guidance toward the alternative. The experiment does not show that the hen understood a false belief inside each chick. It demonstrates a clear comparison between her own learned food information and the behavior she could observe. When those two patterns failed to match, she adjusted her actions. Animal behavior researchers use careful standards when deciding whether an interaction counts as teaching. The experienced animal should change its behavior in the presence of a learner. That change usually carries some cost or offers no immediate reward to the teacher. The learner should also gain a skill or information more quickly than it would alone. Maternal food calling in chickens meets several parts of this definition. The hen increases or redirects her displays according to chick behavior. Time and energy are spent scratching, calling, and handling food, while the chicks receive the main learning benefit. Young birds gain useful information about where to peck and which visible items deserve attention. Intentional classroom-style instruction remains beyond what the experiment can establish. The measured behavior already reveals an active maternal system. A hen watches whether her chicks approach, feed, or choose the color she has learned to distrust. Her own experience becomes a guide for changing what she demonstrates. Maternal care, therefore, includes more than warmth and physical protection. It can shape the young bird's earliest food choices through repeated signals adjusted to the chick's behavior. That attention becomes even more powerful when the brood appears to face danger, and the mother's own body begins responding to what happens to them. Danger changes the mother's role from guide to protector. A chick choosing the wrong food may cause the hen to scratch more actively or repeat her feeding calls. A chick facing possible harm produces a wider response that reaches into the mother's body. Researchers examined this connection in a study published in 2011. Mother hens could see their chicks inside a nearby testing area. Short puffs of air provided a mild, controlled, unpleasant event. The air caused no injury, though it startled the birds and created a clear disturbance that could be repeated safely across several trials. Some air puffs were directed toward the chicks. Other trials delivered the puffs to the mother herself. Undisturbed sessions provided a calm comparison. Additional controls reproduced the sound of the equipment without directing the same burst of air toward the chicks. This separation mattered because the hiss of the apparatus could have startled the hen even when nothing happened to her offspring. When the chicks received the air puffs, their mother became more alert. She spent less time preening and watched the young birds more closely. Preening usually requires a bird to lower its attention toward its own feathers, so a sudden reduction can show that attention has shifted toward the surroundings. The hen's posture and head movements also changed as she monitored the brood. Researchers measured more than visible behavior. An infrared thermal camera recorded temperature around the hen's eye. Infrared cameras detect heat released from the surface of the body. During the chick-directed treatment, eye temperature fell. A drop in surface temperature can occur when blood flow changes during arousal or stress, carrying heat away from the skin around the eye. Heart activity provided another measure. The hens showed an increased heart rate while observing the chicks receive the unpleasant stimulus. Maternal vocalizations also became more frequent. These calls differed from the ordinary sounds of a relaxed hen moving among feeding chicks. Together, the changes formed a coordinated response involving attention, comfort behavior, circulation, heart activity, and communication. The chicks themselves produced relatively little loud distress calling during the trials. That detail reduced the chance that the mothers were reacting only to an intense noise. Visual observation and knowledge of what was happening to the brood appeared to contribute strongly. A follow-up study published in 2013 examined the importance of expectation. Hens learned that particular environmental cues predicted whether an unpleasant event was likely to occur. The chicks could receive different information, allowing the mother's expectation and the young bird's actual behavior to be separated. In some trials, the hen expected a threat even when the chicks showed little reaction. During others, chick behavior supplied signs of disturbance that did not fully match the mother's learned prediction. Her response reflected both sources of information. The hen used what she had previously learned about the situation, while also watching how the chicks behaved in front of her. This result showed that maternal arousal was shaped by more than a simple reflex to movement or sound. Observation, memory, and expectation contributed to the completed response. Scientists sometimes discuss these findings as evidence for components related to empathy. Empathy covers several levels of social sensitivity. At a basic level, one animal's condition can alter the arousal and behavior of another. More complex forms may involve understanding the other individual's separate perspective or emotional state. The hen experiments provide evidence for strong maternal responsiveness and socially mediated arousal. They cannot reveal the exact private experience accompanying those changes. Similar tests involving familiar adult hens have produced weaker evidence of the same response. A chicken may react to alarm or agitation in another adult without showing the full combination recorded when her own chicks are threatened. This difference suggests that maternal sensitivity has been shaped for the special demands of protecting dependent young. A chick's danger can redirect the mother's attention, interrupt her normal comfort behavior, change blood flow around her eyes, raise her heart rate, and alter her calls. The brood becomes part of the information regulating her own body. These capacities formed long before modern poultry houses existed. Their foundations developed in the social life of wild junglefowl and were later altered through thousands of years of domestication, selective breeding, and changing early environments. Red junglefowl chicks once developed within a very different set of daily demands. Their main wild ancestors, known scientifically as Gallus gallus, still live across parts of South and Southeast Asia. Broods move with their mothers through forest edges, bamboo thickets, fields, and patches of dense ground cover. A young bird in that setting benefits from noticing insects in leaf litter, following warning calls, staying concealed, and returning quickly when the hen gathers the brood. Exploration can reveal food. It can also expose a chick to snakes, raptors, or small carnivores. Caution and curiosity, therefore, develop together, shaped by the conditions surrounding each animal. Domestication changed those conditions over many generations. Humans provided regular food and protected spaces, while choosing birds that reproduced well around people. Later breeding placed greater emphasis on egg production, rapid growth, body size, calm handling, or efficient use of feed. These pressures changed more than feathers and weight. They also altered the situations in which attention, fear, exploration, and social behavior developed. A modern white leghorn chick begins life with a different inherited background from a red junglefowl chick. The white leghorn belongs to a domestic line strongly selected for laying eggs. Red junglefowl retain many features shaped by life in less controlled habitats. Early experience continues modifying both birds after hatching. One part of that experience is play. Locomotor play includes running, jumping, wing-assisted movement, and sudden changes of direction that serve no immediate feeding or escape need. Object play appears when a chick investigates or manipulates something that is not ordinary food. Social play involves reciprocal activity between young birds, with each participant responding to the movements of the other. These behaviors can provide practice with balance, speed, novelty, and changing social distance. A chick running across uneven ground learns how its body responds. Handling a harmless object creates contact with unfamiliar textures and movement. Play with another chick may help develop control over approach, retreat, and physical contact. A study published in 2026 compared domestic white leghorns with red junglefowl. Some chicks received additional opportunities for play during approximately the first 5 weeks of life. Their surroundings offered space and materials that encouraged running, object investigation, and interaction with companions. Other birds developed with fewer of these added opportunities. Researchers later measured exploration, social behavior, and several aspects of brain development. The red junglefowl were generally more exploratory than the white leghorns. They also had larger brains relative to body size. Relative brain size compares brain mass with the total mass of the animal. This matters because a heavier bird may have a larger brain in absolute grams, while carrying a smaller brain in proportion to its body. Extra play opportunities influenced both groups. Birds from the enriched play condition explored more during later tests. The experience had therefore changed how readily they entered or investigated unfamiliar situations after the early play period had ended. Social behavior changed most clearly among the white leghorns. Domestic chicks, given more play opportunities later, showed stronger social responses under some testing conditions. The wild and domestic birds did not begin from the same behavioral starting point, so the same experience produced different patterns across the two groups. Brain measurements also showed differences. Stimulated birds had greater brain mass relative to body weight. Their absolute brain weight did not simply increase in a uniform way. Body growth and proportional development both contributed to the result. The cerebellum was examined as well. This region near the rear of the brain helps coordinate movement, balance, and learned motor control. cerebellar findings differed between red, jungle fowl, and white leghorns, and the effects were not equally strong across every measurement. A larger relative brain also cannot be translated directly into a higher intelligence score. Brain regions vary in cell density, connections, and function. Behavioral ability depends on how those systems operate together and how the bird uses them in a particular setting. The study supports a more careful conclusion. Inherited traits influence how chickens begin exploring and responding socially. Early opportunities then alter the development of those tendencies. Domestication changed the starting conditions, while play and environmental complexity continued shaping what became visible later. A chicken's abilities therefore emerge through an ongoing exchange between ancestry and experience. Housing, companions, available space, and opportunities to investigate can strengthen some patterns while leaving others rarely expressed. The environment surrounding a bird becomes part of the process that determines which abilities can be observed at all. The same hen can appear capable in one setting and confused in another. In the Y-shaped maze, hens learn to choose between familiar flock members standing at the ends of two walkways. 7 of 8 birds mastered individual pairings because the task used a natural action, walking toward another chicken. Performance fell when recognition was translated into pecking an artificial key beside a flat image. The required response no longer matched ordinary social behavior. Fear of the apparatus, weak interest in the picture, or uncertainty about the key could prevent recognition from becoming visible. Testing conditions can therefore influence the answer as strongly as the problem itself. Lighting offers a clear example. Chicken vision includes ultraviolet wavelengths that human eyes cannot detect. Feathers, comb tissue, and exposed skin can reflect this light, adding details to another bird's appearance. Colored lamps or narrow artificial spectra may remove or distort those cues. Social discrimination can then decline even when the familiar companion remains directly in front of the hen. Group size changes the information available in a different way. A flock of 10 or 20 allows repeated encounters with the same individuals. Relationships can be remembered and maintained over time. Groups containing approximately 120 birds create a far larger number of possible encounters. Hens in those conditions may depend more heavily on current posture, body size, comb appearance, and immediate confidence. The social system has changed, so the strategy that works best changes with it. Early surroundings also influence how uncertainty is interpreted. Commercial hatchery processing can expose chicks to conveyor movement, machinery noise, handling, and transport soon after hatching. In controlled judgment tests, birds that experienced this processing approached ambiguous cues more slowly than less stressed controls. The difference appeared at about 1 week of age and remained measurable near 10 weeks. A cautious response in later life may therefore carry the effects of events that occurred during the first day. Chicks raised without a mother lose several forms of guidance at once. They still possess early social tendencies and can learn from other chicks. A hen normally adds food calls, demonstrations, warning behavior, warmth, and a stable center for the brood. Her presence can reduce isolation and direct attention towards safe places. Removing that relationship changes the experience through which young birds develop. Physical surroundings shape behavior just as strongly. A barren enclosure may provide food and water, while offering few opportunities to search, hide, perch, or manipulate the ground. Dust bathing requires loose, dry material that can be worked through the feathers. Foraging requires litter, soil, or vegetation containing objects worth investigating. Outdoor movement becomes less likely when a wide open range provides no shrubs, panels, or overhead cover. The chicken may know that space is available while judging the journey across it as unsafe. Useful enrichment gives the bird a meaningful action. Raised perches create choices about height and resting position. Loose substrate allows scratching and dust bathing. Platforms and sheltered areas support exploration with less exposure. Separated feeding points can reduce competition and let lower-ranking hens use remembered routes toward quieter resources. Objects that move or can be pecked may encourage investigation when their texture and placement suit the birds using them. An item does not become enriching simply because it has been placed inside the enclosure. Some objects are ignored after a few minutes. Others may cause fear or become guarded by dominant birds. The effect depends on design, age, strain, previous experience, and the needs already met elsewhere. Technology is beginning to reveal behavior that brief human observation can miss. Electronic leg bands can record each passage through a doorway. Automated cameras can estimate distance traveled, perch use, flock clustering, and movement by particular birds across the day. Microphones may detect changes in calling, respiratory sounds, or general flock noise. These acoustic systems remain under development, and no single sound provides a complete diagnosis. They may eventually help identify changes earlier than occasional visual checks. Cognitive testing can also become more voluntary. A hen allowed to enter an apparatus by choice may reveal more than one isolated from her flock and placed inside by hand. Repeated familiarization can reduce fear before memory or discrimination is measured. The environment supplies the sights, rewards, social cues, and possible actions through which cognition appears. When those inputs fit the chicken's natural abilities, complex behavior becomes easier to observe. Restricted or confusing conditions can leave the same ability hidden behind hesitation. A fair account of chicken intelligence must therefore include the settings that reveal it and the settings that quietly keep it out of view. A hen standing beside a feeder may appear to be doing very little. She pauses while another bird approaches, then shifts several steps to the side. Later, she returns by a familiar route after the dominant hen has moved away. A rooster gives a brief call near scattered grain, and several birds lower their heads toward the ground. Nearby, a mother scratches through loose material, while her chicks gather around her feet. Each action draws on abilities that become clearer when they are measured separately. A chick can maintain information about an object after it disappears behind a screen. Its visual system can join the visible pieces of a partly hidden shape through a modal completion. Young chicks have compared small concealed groups, updated those groups when objects change sides, and used basic position within an ordered row. Some experiments also connect relative quantity with leftward or rightward choices. Spatial learning extends beyond laboratory screens. Chickens remember useful locations and can link a particular type of food with the place where it was previously found. They learn routes between shelter, water, feeding areas, and loose soil suitable for dust bathing. Familiar sounds can predict events before they occur. A hen may prepare for food during the seconds after a learned cue, and her willingness to wait changes according to the size and delay of the reward. The social world adds further layers. Chickens can distinguish familiar individuals under suitable visual conditions. Earlier encounters help them remember which birds usually advance and which ones yield. Within small flocks, these relationships can form a fairly ordered hierarchy. Larger groups may rely more heavily on immediate signs of status and greater social tolerance. Information also passes between birds. A chick can avoid an object after watching another chick react badly to it. Observers may give greater weight to certain demonstrators according to rank, familiarity, or visible success. Rooster food calls guide hens toward ground searching, while alarm calls redirect attention toward likely danger. Calling changes with the audience, showing that communication depends partly on who is present to receive it. Limited experiments with adult hens also support transitive inference, in which several learned relationships are combined to guide a choice involving a pairing the bird has never encountered directly. The evidence remains incomplete. Much of the strongest numerical research has used chicks only a few days old. Some advanced experiments have involved 6 or 8 adult hens. Several tasks require long training periods inside carefully controlled enclosures. Scientists know less about adult numerical ability during natural flock life, or how long detailed social memories survive across months and changing groups. The extent to which chickens track an unreliable caller over long periods also remains uncertain. Perspective taking is another open area. A rooster clearly adjusts some signals according to the audience, yet the full extent of what he understands about another bird's view is difficult to measure. Coalitions, reconciliation after conflict, and stable friendship-like preferences need more study under ordinary flock conditions. Modern breeding adds variation between commercial strains, older domestic breeds, and red junglefowl. Natural maternal rearing may also shape development in ways that are missing when chicks hatch inside machines and grow without a hen. A single intelligence score would flatten these different abilities into one number. Comparisons with dogs, pigs, crows, primates, or children create the same problem. Each animal faces a different set of recurring tasks. Chicken intelligence developed around finding scattered food, remaining near companions, detecting predators, organizing social access, communicating useful events, and protecting young. Its parts work together. Perception supplies details from the ground, sky, and flock. Memory gives those details a history. Emotion changes how uncertain information is judged. Communication allows one bird's discovery or warning to influence others. Social knowledge helps determine when to approach, wait, follow, or withdraw. Experiments have gradually made these processes easier to see. The ordinary movements were present long before researchers placed chicks behind screens or trained hens to choose symbols. As evening settles over a flock, each bird moves among individuals it has encountered before. One remembers a preferred perch. Another responds to the posture of a higher-ranking hen. A soft call directs attention toward a nearby patch of ground, while chicks remain close to the mother whose signals have guided them since hatching. The flock becomes still through a web of remembered places, expected outcomes, familiar voices, and relationships continuing quietly into the night.